everyone, welcome to Energy Toning with Liz, and in today's video I chat with fellow Pangu Shengong practitioner Rick Mater, where we talk about all the healing benefits he has discovered through practicing this Qigong form, as well as discussion around astral projection, Tai Chi and other fascinating topics. So this chat is part of a series of interviews I've done recently with a range of Pangu Shengong practitioners who all have their unique experience to share about this powerful practice. And I'm in the process of making a mini documentary about all of these, so that all these people are going to be included in the documentary. So that's going to take me a while to get that finished because I need to get some Cantonese to English translations done. But in the meantime, I just wanted to start getting these discussions out to the world pretty much unedited, as I just feel a certain urgency to relay any healing information that can help people feel more mentally and emotionally balanced or physically heal certain diseases, as well as explore their full human potential, especially amongst all the chaos of today's world. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion between Rick and I. All right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to have a chat to me. And I'm really happy to meet other Pangu practitioners and just hear your story, basically, because I've only really been practicing for 3 years. So in some ways, I feel pretty new to it compared to
always. Even I first learned it in 2005,
and
it still feels
new.
I still feel like a neophyte,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you first come across Pangu?
All right. So it came through a very paranormal way.
Okay. Interesting.
Right? It wasn't like I was out there looking for discovering it. I think it was more of an event of it finding me than me finding it. It was a very bittersweet process for me because it started off with my mom's passing.
Okay.
Yeah. And when she passed away, I mean, nothing could have been more devastating for me than that experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I went to this deep grief. I was raised Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
but I never bought into the whole, the idea of like you go to heaven and oh, I believe in a heaven, but not the way it's been described or the way it's been taught to me through Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I thought, you know what? Once you're dead, it's over. It's the end. It's just blackness.
Mm-hmm.
That was my thinking. Because where's the evidence? Where's the proof?
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom died on May 2nd. She transitioned, like to say. And for a period of 7 months, I became very withdrawn. I didn't want to go see anybody. I would just stay locked up in my room. And I stayed away from myself. I didn't want to be around nobody. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to deal with the grief.
Yeah.
I was engulfed in it. And so, it's a long story short. So my sister had invited us for New Year, Thanksgiving, something we're celebrating. Are you in the U.S.? You have an accent.
No, I'm in Australia.
In Australia. Yeah. I got a friend out in Brisbane that I communicate. I just met her yesterday.
Ah, okay.
So I didn't want to go. I didn't want to, it's just too soon. I didn't want to celebrate anything. My wife has a way of convincing me to do things I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And how she got me was, it's what your mom would have wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just stayed in the living room. I didn't mingle with anyone, and I was just wanted to get back home. So the next day I called my sister and I says, hey, I wanted to thank you for, the dinner, blah, blah. And she was like, hey, listen, by the way, I have a cousin in Long Island. He wants to talk to you. And I'm like, well, you saw me there. How come you didn't say anything? He goes, he doesn't know how to approach you. And I'm like, all right. So I call him up. We got a conference call going. I'm like, his name is Hope. I just got off the phone like a minute ago. I'm like, oh, what's going on? You wanted to talk? What do you want to say? He's like, hey, man, I don't know how to explain this to you. But on the night that your mom passed on, she visited me.
Wow.
And, she slapped me in the head. She's like, how come you come see me? And so how he phrased was that when she transitioned, she went straight to the other side, and now she's working with her guides and she's getting ready for her next path or whatever. And I'm just like, what? And then that's you think that would get me. What got me was he says, and they, I'm like, who are they? And he goes, her guides, they, them. I don't know how to describe them. They said that you're doing specific things that you shouldn't be doing. And he rattled off every single thing that I was doing. There was no way he could have known. Not even my wife knew
Wow.
the stuff that I was doing. And he was very specific. He was like, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And that got me thinking, holy crap, there is something that happens once you transition. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know if so the soul is immortal, and that experience rocked my world. So from there, I don't know how it got me to open up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I says, well, if this is going on, well, let me explore it. Let
Mm.
me dive into it, see what's out there. And somehow I got into Tai Chi, learning Tai Chi, and I don't know why I selected Tai Chi. I don't know why, but I know there was some weird stuff going in the class
Mm-hmm.
that I remember asking a guy who was getting his PhD in physics, right? And I approached him during class, say, hey man, can you describe what's happening in this class? And he goes, look, man, according to the laws of physics, the things that's happening in this class shouldn't be happening at all,
Huh.
but they're happening. And so at that point, I was really into Tai Chi. And then I came across an article written by a guy named Vincent Chu.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Vincent, you've heard of Vincent
Yeah.
Chu?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read the article, and then at the end, where it says like, it said his name, and he practices Pangu Shengong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, what the hell is Pangu Shengong? You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I figured, if he's studying it and he's a Tai Chi master, then there's got to be something to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then, so it's always been like these serendipitous type of like connections and events that got me plodding along. And then so I looked up Pangu, and I was fascinated by the story.
Mm.
You know how what happened to this guy? He was in jail, and
Worst
and
possible conditions, like,
worst possible conditions, and you know, all throughout my life, I have to confess, I've always had paranormal experiences.
right.
Yeah, and for me, I found those experiences very frustrating,
Mm-hmm. Because you
very
couldn't explain
unnerving.
them?
Huh?
Because you couldn't explain them, or
Because every person, because when I would try to get an explanation for them, and I would approach I approached priests, I approached people that I thought would have the information, and they came back to me with something that was more dogma than
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
explanation. I mean, like I spoke to one person, he was like, "Oh, it's demons," and I'm like,
That's not helpful.
I'm not talking to this guy anymore. So so there was something that resonated with me about that, and there was I found like this guy's experiencing something that sort of like not similar, but I think we're all having these experiences, and a lot of us don't want to acknowledge it, try to dismiss. I was in that camp for a while, trying to dismiss it, trying to dispute it. I
Mm-hmm.
would go to science. Where's the data? Where's the evidence? How can this is happening. I know it's anecdotal, but I can't dispute it. It happened. So that was how I came about with the Pangu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was a bittersweet experience because I figured I wish I had come across this before, so maybe I could help my mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
think a lot of people feel that they wish they'd come across it earlier. I know
earlier.
that's the same
But
with me.
I kind of like said, well, you know what? Maybe her going through what she did is what got me on this path.
Mm. Mm.
You know, so maybe there was a purpose in that. You know,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the bitter tempering
yeah.
that, yeah, Master O talks about, which I still can't get my head around, that why we have to go through a bit of tempering to have these realizations. It still feels
Well,
like,
I like to use the analogy that if you ever look like at samurai, the stories of the samurais,
Mm-hmm.
and they say that their sword is an extension of their soul. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why they're always polishing and maintaining the soul. So I think the tempering for me is sort of our way of polishing our soul.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Going through this process, tempering, this cleansing,
Mm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. So you've just come across Pangu Shengong, and
Yes.
back then was there a website that you know, or was the website not
No, the
up?
website was up. I went to the website and I read a few of the articles. Some of it was a bit, you know, I don't know, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit for me. Others were like, okay, I was intrigued enough that I wanted to explore it,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found an instructor in New York City. I went to go, her name was Lorna. I went to go see her. And I very much liked that she was just like a normal person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Very down to earth. She was funny. We got along great. There was no, I'm your guru, none of that stuff. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't woo-woo, which is what I
Mm-hmm.
like.
Mm-hmm.
And I started practicing, and right away I started feeling like the chi sensations,
Mm-hmm.
the
So
hands.
because you'd already practiced Tai Chi, so you were kind of familiar.
Well, no, the Tai Chi only lasted about 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, how can I say this? I loved it. I was enthralled with the Tai Chi, you know. My wife, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when the teacher approached me one night after class and said, "Listen, would you consider being a private student?" And I'm like, well, "What's involved with that?" And he goes, "Well, you know, you get to learn how to use the Tai Chi, how to the Fa Jing," and he starts talking. I'm like, so I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. So all this practice we're doing, he's like, yeah, if you really want to know how to do the real Tai Chi Chuan, you got to be a private student.
Mm-hmm.
And and that was at $500 a month, right?
Well.
So how do I I'm convinced I want to do it, but how do I get my wife to get on board? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
she has a way of talking me out of things, which is frustrating. You know, so I didn't do that. So that's why I stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
stopped with the Tai Chi and I just started doing the Pangu stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you did do Tai Chi classes though, did you get any sense of that chi flow? Like was that familiar
I
to
got knocked on my ass by
how
the
did
teacher, right?
you
I outweighed the guy by 50, 60 pounds, right?
mm-hmm.
At the time, I was like 235, 240 pounds. And this guy was maybe about rocking 170,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was during a demonstration in class. He calls me up and he has me clasp my hands and I'm resting it right on his shoulder. He's eating an apple, right? And he's talking to the people at the demonstration. And he says, well, this, and that. And then he looks at me, he goes, you ready? And in my mind, I got this mantra going, you got to show me. I'm not going to like, you got to show me. You got to prove to me that what you're doing is legit. I'm
Uh-huh.
not going to fall down for you. I'm not. And that's what I was reading. He looked at me. He tapped me barely an inch, right? And to this day, I recall what I felt. The first thing I felt was I felt my body stomp, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could feel my eyes roll through my head, right? And then the force, the energy. I mean, I've played, growing up, I played like contact sports like football and, rough stuff. And when somebody pushes you, you're going to move because of the inertia, the momentum, right? It's a physical thing.
Mm.
It didn't feel like that. It felt like instead of getting pushed, I felt like I got sucked.
Wow.
And I remember like flying off, landing on my back, and still with the inertia, I like rolled over. I had my phone in my pocket. It like rolled all the way over there. And I must have landed back, no exaggeration, about 15 or 20 feet away. Just getting tapped.
Oh my God. So he was the real deal.
It was the real deal. And my wife was in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I'm like, what did you see? She was, I saw you get knocked on your ass, and you like landed all the way like back, and you rolled over, and she goes, and your phone flew out of your pocket.
Wow, what an amazing story. Amazing.
I never felt so happy getting knocked on my ass
Yeah,
like I did in that, because it validated something.
yeah.
This is real.
The force is real.
Force is real.
Yeah,
You
100%.
know.
Wow. So you've gone and learnt Pangu from
Yep.
this woman in New York.
Yep.
And so did you feel something the first time you learnt it,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Mhm.
The first thing I felt were the chi sensations in my hand.
In the hands? Yeah.
You know, and I don't remember feeling it much while practicing Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I would practice Tai Chi in class to the point where there's like sweat puddles on the ground because I was so into it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I was riding that wave of like, oh my God, my mom visited me. There is this stuff. There is life after life, and I want to explore this. I want to get into it. So I got really deep, but I didn't. So when I learned the form, I felt the sensations. It felt like at the time it felt like having like mini tornadoes in my hand. Is how I
Mm-hmm.
would describe it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that
Wow.
was kind of fun. That was like, this is I can feel it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I can't pretend that this is actually happening.
It's
I'm sensing
a real experience.
it's a real experience.
And that whenever I doubt the Path of Life books, I think, yeah, but I can't discount what I'm feeling in my own body,
Yeah.
so I can relate to that. And so did you start practicing every day, or how did it pan out?
Yeah. Well, because I started practicing every day because I wanted to learn the other forms. I wanted to learn the non-moving form. I wanted to learn the condensed form. Um, Health-wise, I was, you know what? No. At the time, I would get seasonal allergies. And those seasonal allergies would trigger asthma.
Mm-hmm.
So twice a year, I would get knocked out with having going through asthma. I had a nebulizer. I had a stack of medicines or whatever. And I remember my mom telling me when I first got diagnosed with asthma, she's like, you have to be careful because they're going to give you a lot of medication, and then you can become dependent on medication.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had in the back of my mind that I didn't want to get dependent on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I was just practicing for the joy of practicing.
Mm-hmm.
I was just practicing because, okay, what happens next? What happens after this? What if I practice so much? Maybe I can make sense of why I used to experience something called astral projection.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a bum experience for me because I was 15 years old and I was hanging out. Can I talk about this? Is it right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
I'm in the corner with my three best friends, Oscar, Angel, and Albert. And somehow my friend Oscar, he was in front of me, Angel's to my right, Albert's to my left, and we're in the corner, we're just chatting away. And Oscar talks about, hey, you guys ever have a dream where like when you're falling down and right before you like impact, you wake up? We're like, yeah. So then my friend Andrew goes, hey, you guys ever dream that you're trying to run away from something scary, but your legs feel so heavy and you feel like it's that you're running on my lap? Yeah. And then my friend Albert talks about, you guys ever dream about flying? And we're like, yeah. So now I get caught up in the enthusiasm and I want to share something too. And I'm like, you guys ever like, you're still asleep, but then you're awake, and if you turn around, you can see yourself sleeping, you know? And they were like in unison, they're like, no, you? And I'm like, no, I'm saying I read about that stuff. Nothing happens to me, but I read about it. That. I felt that was like a gut punch for me
Mm,
because I assumed that everybody dreams, so we don't talk about it much. I assumed everybody experienced that, but we don't just talk about it. But
mm-hmm.
it's like a mundane thing. Yeah, I left out of my body, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I'm like, oh shit, something's wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What the fuck, something's wrong with me, And I remember feeling alone. I remember feeling like, oh my God,
Was this before Pangu or after Pangu?
this is before Pangu.
Mm-hmm.
This is when I was 15 years old.
Okay, yeah.
All these little things are it's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
It's
mean?
like a path that's going that way.
It's like a path that's going on, and each time I try to veer off the path, I get brought back right in. Um, so that's why I was practicing Pangu, because I wanted answers.
Mm.
You know, this thing is so mysterious. It's this. There's a line. I think it was I was given a card by Master O, and I think in the card there was a wording that said to make how's it go? Something about to make the mystical not so mystical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something to that effect. So I want that kind of clarity. I don't want this thing to be mystical. I want to learn. I want to know why it happens.
Yeah. Mm. So when you started practicing and like thinking about the astral projection, did it start to make more sense to you? Like what answers did Pangu Shengong start to give you about the questions that you'd had?
Let me backtrack a bit. There was a guy who wrote a guy named Rick Stack, and he's an author, and he wrote a book called Out of Body Adventures, right? And in his book, he talks about how to have an out of body experience, and he goes through the steps, whatever, whatever. My thinking was, if I can learn the steps that are involved in doing that, maybe I can reverse the process so that it can stop happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I went, and he was in New York. He gave a class. I talked my friend Ron into going with me because I didn't want to go by myself. And we went to this guy's class, and I wanted to learn, hey man, how can I stop this from happening? And everybody was like, why would you want to? And I'm like, I'm in the wrong place. It didn't help. Why did I don't know why I veered off into that tangent. I do that a lot.
No, that's
But
all right.
going back to the Pangu, um,
Did it stop the astral
well,
projection?
you know when it stopped? One day, because when it would happen, I would try to fight it so much that I'd wake up and I'd feel so drained
Mm.
energetically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I expended a lot of energy. So it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting in the sofa, and I just had a realization: what if I'm the cause of this happening? And
Mm.
it's not something outside, but something that I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware that I'm doing it. And from that moment on, it stopped.
Wow. Amazing. So do you think that the practice helped you have that realization?
No, I
Or
had to mention it before the practice, but
okay.
again,
Okay.
uh, when I'm practicing Pangu, I have all these things going on that I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking about relating to. Um,
Like intuitions?
yeah,
Yeah. It's like you're getting downloads.
downloads. Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so you mentioned that you had asthma and allergies. Do you remember
That
it?
went away.
Yes. How long do you reckon that took you for that to go away?
Well, there's okay. So there's like I don't readily know. It's one day it just dawned on me. I don't get asthma anymore.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting allergies anymore.
Mm. Which is
And
a
then I
common
get to
story. It's a
right,
common story.
and then it got to the point that I did start to get a little concerned when the medication was reaching its expiration date.
Mhm.
But I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna. There was two other things happened. Now I'm not a model student. It's not like I practice every single day.
Mhm.
But I was sharing this analogy with my friend Claudia a few days ago. I said, Pangu is like an unconditional best friend that you don't call his best friend for a while, you lose touch, but then something happens and you reach out to your friend and they're there to help
Mhm.
you. This
Mhm.
was the case. I woke up one day and my gut was making these weird sounds, right? And I felt a sharp pain um, around where my liver is or whatever. And I went to go see the doctor. And I'm like, hey man, I don't know what this is, man. My gut's singing and it hurts. So he said I had gastro something and titus, whatever. He prescribed something called Nexum, like acid reflux. That's what it was. He goes, you got acid reflux,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave me a prescription. And I remember looking it up online. And I'm like, I don't want to take this.
Mm.
You know, I don't think this is gonna worsen my situation. So I didn't take it at all, and I started practicing Pangu every day. 30 days later, gone.
Huh. Wow.
Never experienced this thing. There was another thing that I used to experience. It was also a gastrointestinal issue that for some reason, it seemed like every 6 months or so, I'd start having cramps in my intestines and something I ate or whatever, and I'd wind up in the ER and I'd be dehydrated, and they would like plug me with some kind of steroid or something like that. And this was every 6 months I would go through this process.
Mm.
And one night I started feeling the pangs of it. And I'm like, oh man, it's gonna happen again. And I didn't want to go to the ER because I didn't want to be up there for. So you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna practice. And I practiced. I did one set of the moving form. It was still there. I did a second set of the moving form. It was less. By the third uh, form, it stopped. 10 years ago, and it's never come back. I haven't experienced that ever since.
Wow. That's incredible. Wow, because you kind of think that um, you have to keep practicing to keep it at bay, but this is like a once-off thing that you just decided, all right, I'm dealing with this,
I'm
and
dealing with it. I want to do the qigong, and you know, what am I got to lose? I want to go to the ER anyway, so let me
that's
do
right.
this.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, and because you had a lot of grief with your mother's transition, did you, once you started practicing Pangu, how did that grief transform for you? Like, was there a point where you suddenly felt it was lifted or you could deal with it? What was the alchemy of that situation?
I think in hindsight, I think if I had, because I always practice the moving form, I wouldn't do the non-moving form as much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't practice Pangu at all when I went through that grief, when I was going through that grief process.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't just think it. I didn't. I think the thought behind that thought was that if I get rid of this, I don't want to forget my mom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you felt like it was a form of respect to go
Yeah,
through that
to
suffering.
go through this, and
Yeah.
and I know, and I recall that Master always says that while you're doing the process, you have to be centered and at peace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at peace.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm
Yeah.
engulfed in grief.
That makes sense. What is what's one of the most other than what you just described with the pains in your liver, what are some other experiences that might stick out to you? Like what motivates you to keep coming back to it?
Well, the validating evidence that I experienced for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've done some other qigongs, right? Just to compare,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't feel it as much when I'm doing those qigongs, and I find them very restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing is so easy. It's so easy to do.
Mm.
Um, I think I like the idea that I have something in my toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
And in case of emergency, break glass, pull it out,
Mm-hmm.
solve the issue.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah. What about other people you've introduced? Have they taken it on board and, have they embraced it in a similar way?
My good friend Claudia, she developed some kind of what's the name? Something I don't know the name. She has some kind of infection in her intestine,
Mm-hmm.
and there was some sort of abscess,
Mm-hmm.
right? and she was hospitalized for several weeks, and it kept coming back. And the second time, I'm like, look, why don't you practice this thing that I practice called Pangu? Do that. And she was in so much pain. She's like, I'll do anything, you know. And she learned it, and she credits the practice. They were going to perform a surgery on her,
Mm-hmm.
right? And on the day of the surgery, they ran a test, whatever, and they found that the abscess exploded,
Mm.
right? And she didn't require the surgery anymore.
Oh, wow. So this is after she started practicing.
This is after she started practicing Qigong.
Mm.
And the doctor himself says, I don't know how to explain this. This should not have happened.
Wow.
I just had this conversation with her several nights ago.
Amazing. So she's sold.
She practiced, yeah. She's like me. She's not a model student. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is. I was like, Claudia, just like only 20 minutes, do it right after brushing your teeth,
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I'm not practicing what I no, but I have been more consistent this month with the
Mm-hmm.
practice,
Mm-hmm.
so much so that I get up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to do it.
Oh, wow. Earlier than me. I thought I was getting up earlier.
It's the only time because again, this new job, I have to devote time in the morning to do because it's a technical job. So I got to devote early in the morning. I got to do a lot of studying to catch up on the technology, whatever. But before I do that, I got to do the qigong practice first
Mm-hmm.
before I do the studying.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'll never get to it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
always the issue. I'll do it now. Like no, let me do that. Let me make that the first priority, and then yeah, I've been. So that's how I've been managing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm a bit the same. Do
But
the
I
hard.
got a question for you.
Yeah.
How did you start? How did you get involved?
Well, do you know Keith Cooley or Keith
Yeah,
Cole? Yeah. So
yeah.
he and I are friends on Facebook, and we're both Ness Health practitioners. So I met him through Ness Health, and he was doing lectures for Ness Health Company through Facebook. And for years, he's always talking about Pangu Shengong, Pangu Shengong. I didn't take him up on it. I don't know why, because I was already practicing different forms of Qigong, and I thought there can't be a better form of Qigong. Like, they're all good, right? Like, how can this one be superior? I just didn't really believe him in one way. But then 2020 happened. And I don't know whether you know that, but Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world.
Yeah.
That's where I am. So we had 262 days of lockdown. And of course, from very early on, I wasn't buying into what was going on. And yet at the same time, I felt like majority of the world around me was buying into it. And I just started to go a little bit like, am I the problem here, or is it the rest of the world is the problem? And so I'd been listening to Keith, and I've experienced some of his energy healing, and I thought, you know what, I need something new, because my yoga, my other Qigong, all these tools that I know about, meditation, they're not helping. And
What other qigong did you practice?
Holden Qigong, a little bit of Spring Forest. I just sort of dabbled,
Yeah.
And I even took Holden Qigong teacher training. And so, I thought, because that was a very obvious physical sensation for me, I thought, well, this is it. This is what Qigong is. But I was a little bit skeptical of the more mystical aspect of Qigong, whereas Holden Qigong made it very down to earth in one way. But I think just because I was searching for more meaning to all the chaos in the world, and being locked in our homes and seeing people wearing masks outside my window, like walk past by themselves, I'm just thinking, this is crazy. And then all the vaccine stuff happened. So I just thought, you know what, I just need something new. I need to experience this, because the world's just not making sense to me anymore. So I think I came at from a perspective of wanting to understand darkness, evil, because basically I do feel what happened was evil throughout the last couple of years. it was very dark, and I needed a way to process that. And I've not looked back, and so now, yeah, I'm a teacher. So yeah,
You became a teacher?
yeah, I went all the way. So
That I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, no, it's I because I used to teach yoga, and I've also taught some of the Holden Qigong as well. I felt that by becoming a teacher, it's almost like to teach is to learn. So I thought, well, if I'm a teacher, then I'm going to learn about it even more deeply.
Yes,
That was my perspective. So yeah,
I'm at a point now where I am, which is why I started the practice, to go for the teacher certification. So I can start, teaching and have, I want my kids to grow up doing it. I got 2 boys, 8 and 10. So I want them to do, start doing it.
Yeah. I mean, apart from anything else, just the morality of it is very grounding,
Yeah.
And it's not even one thing I like about it is it's not really religious. It's common sense. You can't argue with kindness and benevolence.
No, you can't.
You just innately know that's a good thing, right?
I mean, it's the same thing. It's no different than what Jesus preached in the New Testament. It comes down to love. It comes down to benevolence. You know what? I'm convinced on an intuitive level that Jesus learned Qigong.
Oh yeah, I feel like there's something that connects all of these religious practices.
Qigong's been around for over 5,000 years. And then the Bible never talks about the time when Jesus leaves Nazareth, and for like X amount of years, where do they go? They probably went east. A lot of the practice that he does when he came back, the meditation, the prayer, the fasting, that's all like to me.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree with that. And I heard something the other day actually that suggested that there was a lot of influence from the East. So that makes sense. But yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, but I really, really appreciate having this chat. I loved it. It was thrilling, and so great to hear about your experiences, and great to meet you too.
So what do you intend to do with all this, with this information? Are you putting something out?
I suppose see, one thing I've noticed, so I run a Zoom practice every morning, and what I'm noticing is Westerners are not so keen to embrace this, and I've got a lot of Chinese who come in to the Zoom practice, and in Australia there's not really a big.
That's ironic because I experienced the
opposite. That's fascinating. Yeah,
a lot of Asians in America, they don't want it.
Interesting. Yeah,
and more Americans gravitate towards it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So I don't know, I guess I just maybe I want to find a way to make it more digestible for people, so there's not maybe a cultural barrier that might be putting people off. Of course, I want to gain more students, but also with anyone who wants to use the video for them to gain more students, they can use it as well. So I guess it's just a further, because one thing that with there's so much on YouTube about spiritual practices and this and this and this, but with Pangu there's not a lot of information, and I kind of want to start to fill that gap so it can be more accessible to more people. And I love create. My background is music, and I've got some marketing background as well. So
okay, excellent.
And healing. So I'm sort of bringing it all together, and So that's really
good on you.
So yeah, I just really wanted to chat to others and get different perspectives, and
well, I hope I've helped out.
No, 100%. No, I loved it. It's thrilling. All right, thank you so much, Rick.
And bless you.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch.